the preface, which is just a one-pager, talks about destiny, fate, and how it impacted the main character. But it also explains that other people have a greater impact on your life than you have on yourself, if you think about that. And the other thing is that, everyone wonders, well, why are we here? It's very simple. We're here to make life better for others instead of making life better for ourselves at the expense of others. If you follow that rule, you can probably improve on your spirituality right away. The other thing that I write about a lot, with a lot of the characters in there, again, based on real people, is meditation. Meditation opens up a gift that we all have. And once you start to meditate properly, you start to get a better understanding. Meditation is listening to God, while praying is talking to God.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have another great author on the podcast today. And Paul is here with us today. We're going to be talking about his journey as an author. He's got some amazing things that he would love to talk to us about in his book as well, coming out. I'm really excited to have Paul here, and I'm so glad he made time to be here. Paul, thank you so much for being on Living in the Next Chapter. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, Paul. Tell everybody where you are in this big world of ours, Paul.
Right now, where I am?
Yeah.
All right. I'm in the parents' room of the martial arts center for my grandson. While he's out exercising, amazing. We're having this conversation in Winchester, Virginia.
There you go. Awesome. Very good. Great. Paul, let's jump in right away and jump into your story as an author. I know you've done many, many things throughout your life, and writing a book maybe wasn't probably one of the first things you thought about doing when you were younger, but tell us the journey. How did you get to the point where writing a book became something that you wanted to do and pursue?
Well, the reason I wrote the book was mostly because I understood that there was a lot of suppressed information going on. I also understood that people didn't understand how spirituality links with the extraterrestrial phenomenon. There were a lot of experiences that I had. There were a lot of people that I made contact with. I didn't really start to think about writing the book until 2017. But what I do in the book, because the book is like an autobiography, is that I guide the reader through the process of how I started out having thoughts about being taught Catholicism when I was a young kid, and just having a lot of critical thinking about it. And that's just one part of what impacted and influenced me on where I am right now. So I guide the reader through progression from being a Catholic student for 8 years, and then in high school having a enthusiasm about science fiction and the space program and things like that. But of course, the thing that started me on the journey that kind of acted as a catalyst for this was when I was in the Air Force, where I discovered a secret basement that kept a cryogenic chamber that had cadavers in it, or probably from Roswell. So I had that information, but again, that didn't start me on writing the book until I started to do some investigation, started to meet people. A lot of women that were psychic would tell me that I had a role to play, that I was a counselor and informer. And that's what actually started me on the process when I started a blog in 2009, and that blog was a way to get people that were contactees that had experiences to share their experiences with me, and I documented it. And then when it was time for me to find work with the government, I stopped that blog because there were things in there that really wouldn't seem favorable to somebody that was interviewing me if they found out about it. So I stopped that blog, but I kept all the information, kept all the documents. And when I started to meet people and things started to happen to me, like in meditation, outer body experiences, having a medium that would give me information as a third party from another entity. That's when I decided to write the book.
Wow. Okay, so as somebody's listening to this and they hear you talk about this basement, and they're like, Dave, can you go back? Can you ask some more questions about this? What can you tell us about what you have experienced? Because it's definitely shaped you. It's had an impact on you
Right.
to the point to write the book and to be on this path. Was this just a random occurrence that you just kind of came across this space?
Yeah.
Had you known about this
No,
space before?
it was an accident. So there were two extraterrestrial type events that made me think about that and made me investigate more. One was that incident, and the other was when I was in high school, and I was listening to a rock station, but I fell asleep, and then when I woke up, there was a talk show, and the talk show had Barry Von Doniken, and he was talking about the book of Ezekiel and how the book of Ezekiel was actually a detailed documentation of Ezekiel going into a craft, meeting these creatures, going into the craft, and then experiencing all these things. So, that obviously caught my attention. The next day I went to school. I looked up the book, and sure enough, all those words that he stated were there. He was telling the truth. And I was a construction manager. And the project that I had was for a building called Foreign Technology Division, which, if you are there, it is surrounded by motion detectors. And if you go into the facility, you're escorted, even if you have a top secret clearance, because it's all need to know. If you go into the building, everything is white. There are no numbers on the doors. There's no directory. There are no names. And individuals working in one office do not know what's going on in the other office because it's called compartmentation. So my project was on the second floor, and I was escorted on the second floor. It was gutted because it was supposed to be used for a large computer center. And in those days, in the mid to late 80s, computers were much larger. So they needed a lot of room and a lot of infrastructure. When I got there, everything was gutted. It was ready for the new work. But what I was there to do was to inspect the situation, and I compared it to the as-built drawings, making sure that there was no possibility of a modification or change order. So I was going through the as-built drawings, and one of the sheets indicated that it had a basement. So this is a facility that was originally a warehouse, 2 stories, very large, windowless. And normally when you do a warehouse, you don't build a basement. Okay. So
Right.
I checked the outline, and I made sure that the facility matched the outline of the basement, and it was. And I thumbed through pages some more, and I see a detailed floor plan that indicates cryogenic chamber. And right there, I knew that there was sensitive information in this set, and I didn't have a need to know for that. So I looked at my escort. He didn't see that I had any reaction. I rolled everything up, and I kept that secret for 5 years after I left the service. The thing is that it aligns perfectly with Phil Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, where he talks about shipping the cadavers to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So that makes sense. And now if you go to Google, and you go to Google Earth and you look for that facility, it's gone. It's been razed. All it is a parking lot. And if you go into records for, real estate records or anything like that, You won't find it. It's like it never existed.
Hmm. Okay. That's, that's very curious. Uh, when when you come across stuff like that, is it a confirmation, or is it something that makes you nervous to find information like this? Like, how do you react in the moment? You said you didn't acknowledge it to the person with you. You just kind of did your thing.
Yeah.
But in your mind, are you getting nervous? Are you getting excited? What's
It's
happening?
funny. I write in the book that the main character who finds that was surprisingly calm, and I was surprisingly calm. And for some odd reason, it was put in to my subconscious. I never thought to tell anyone about it after it. And it only occurred to me that it happened like 5 years afterwards when I was watching a show called Ancient Aliens, and it reminded me of Ezekiel because it had Von Daniken, and he was talking about the book of Ezekiel, and then that memory of being in foreign technology division and seeing those drawings came back to me, and I thought, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So for some odd reason, it was placed in my subconscious, and it never bothered me.
Wow. See, I don't know how I would react in a moment like that. Like, you have training, you have experience, you've seen things and done things prior to that, so it all kind of works together. But as an outsider thinking of my reaction, I don't know if I could be so calm and cool and collected in that moment. I would be like, what is going on here?
When the moment comes in extreme situations, we respond to those situations. We may not think that we would, but that is part of the defense mechanisms that we have. If something like that would happen to you, I'm sure you would behave the same way because it's part of our defense mechanism.
Okay. So talk through then, how do you take this information, all this learnings, all these life things that you've been through, and then decide that a book is the natural outlet for you to share your stories? Like, what was the thing that kind of made you say, okay, I'm going to sit down and write this book?
Well, as I mentioned, I had the blog, and then I set up a Facebook page called Spirits and Healing, which was for a group for people that it was like a support group for people that had contacts that were say they were abducted, that had all kinds of experiences, and individually they were subdued. They were ridiculed by their parents, their peers, or their spouses, and they felt alone. But when I encouraged them to meet the group, then they all started to talk to each other, and it acted like a support group, and they shared a lot of things, and a lot of things happened where they had some commonalities in their experiences. So that was part of it. And the other part was, again, a lot of those people there were women that were psychic. They didn't know each other, but there were many of them. And for some reason, it's always that I find psychic women. I never found a psychic man. I don't know why, but they would have the same response to me when they would talk to me, that I had a role to play, that I needed to be a counselor, an informer, and I thought about it, and I thought about the blog that I had. And so one weekend I decided, okay, let me write an outline. And I wrote 31 pages in one weekend of outline, and I never strayed from it. And I'm pretty sure I had help doing that, because people just don't do that, especially first-time writers. They don't do that.
Right. So, okay, Paul, like, there's the Hollywood version of what we're talking about, which is magnified and fictionalized, and things are made up,
Mhm.
and it's all kind of this mixture, right?
Right.
And then there's the reality of what people have seen and experienced and come across, like you have.
Right.
What do we get wrong when we flick on the Hollywood switch to what we're talking about right now? Like, I kind of hear people like probably listening to this going, "Oh, Paul, yeah, right, whatever," because they think in Hollywood
Yeah.
terms. But what do you see, Paul, when you go out and look under at the stars at night there in West Virginia? What do you know inside you as a
No.
person about what's out there? Like, what are you convinced of?
Well, what people don't understand is that there is a spiritual link to the extraterrestrial phenomena. Okay, the two are working together. Um, the the reason that we had a spike of activity after like the World War II, it actually occurred when we detonated the bombs in Hiroshima, because it was like a fire alarm throughout the universe. The reason was because they know that we are spiritually not advanced to have that kind of technology. It's They say it's like we're children playing with matches. We don't have the ethics. We don't have the responsibility. They know that already. So that's what you see, is that they're observing, right? Um, the spiritual part is that Earth is important to the universe. Why? Because they call Earth school. It's where our spirits link to us through the pineal gland in our brain, which acts as a receptor. They learn the human things, creativity, beauty, pain, suffering, compassion, love. All of that is learned through the human experience, and it's this is like kindergarten for the rest of the universe. It's where the spirits learn first about stuff like that. They made the planet in that manner. So what happens is that when the lesson is done, and the spirit passes, the human being passes, the spirit decouples, goes back to all the spirit combined, where they either download or upload for the next existence, and it's there where they determine whether or not they learned the lessons properly. So the universal community is concerned about us spiritually, so we don't screw up the earth. And second, they're concerned that we don't. There's a group, inter galactic group called Archons. They're interdimensional, and I guess the religion calls them demons. And what they do is they are like emotional vampires. So they feed off of the pain, suffering, and all of that, and the rest of the good universal community is fighting that. So as I mentioned to one of the members that is fictionalized in my book, that we are in the middle of a spiritual war, and it involves the entire universe, not just us.
Wow. All right.
That's a lot to get right.
It's a lot. It's amazing. The one thing I always kind of chuckle at, Paul, is when I hear people say, that the humankind is at the top of the, the whole structure of the world and the universe, and we are the top level. And it's like, it seems a little arrogant when you look at how big the expansive universe is and all of the things that make up everything that's happening. It's all working in orchestra with each other. It just doesn't feel like some guy from Canada in his 50s is the top of the top, right? It just feels like there's got to be something else. And with everything we're seeing in the news and clips and unexplained things and occurrences and visuals and things that are happening around us that just seem to be suppressed, it's nice to have somebody like you that kind of opens the door and says, okay, well, what if? And puts these scenarios and things in front of us that sparks the conversation.
Let me explain to you a couple things. The reason that you see all of the advanced civilizations is not because that they're smarter than us. It's because that they have been around longer and they've been able to evolve longer. And that's because their spirituality and their technology are about level. When you have a difference in either, if you have, for instance, a high amount of technology like we do, but our spirituality is corrupt, you have a greater propensity to self-eradicate. When you have a higher amount of spirituality and lower amount of technology, you have a greater propensity to be assimilated. So these advanced races have figured it out, the spiritual part, and they figured out the technological part, and they've been around for much, much longer than we have. They're not smarter than us. We are very intelligent compared to the rest, and that's what they're very concerned about, because, you know, you put someone that's very intelligent but has a propensity to be violent, barbaric, have an irrational obsession with possessions, being genocidal. Those aren't good qualities to have for somebody that's checking out the rest of the universe. That's why we're under a technological quarantine.
And that whole idea of us, Earth being more of a school.
Right.
That's interesting to me to hear that as well, because that doesn't feel like we've graduated. We're in school. We're learning. Right. We're a part of that. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking that, well, we're humans, so we must have graduated. We're not in a school learning stage. We're in we're teaching the world, we're teaching the universe about how it should be. There's a student side to all this as well.
Yeah, and it's temporary. Okay. People don't need to understand that compared to a universe, this really is a very short class compared for them. When the spirit links up with the other spirits, it takes about 400 to 500 years for them to link up with another, form of life. So, the time here is very small compared to the rest of the universe.
So looking at your website too, Paul, as we're chatting, you have many things to share with us as readers. The disclosure paradox, that's available February 18th, according to your website here.
Today.
But you have other books as well, right? So for what we're talking about right now, are we talking about the disclosure paradox? Is
yes.
That kind of that's what this book is? Okay. What else do we need to know about this book as a reader? I'm thinking of the listener. Right. And they're like, is this the right book for me? Am I gonna love this book?
Okay, so
what else do we need to know about this book?
The preface, which is just a one-pager, talks about destiny, fate, and how it impacted the main character. But it also explains that other people have a greater impact on your life than you have on yourself, if you think about that. And the other thing is that, everyone wonders, well, why are we here? It's very simple. We're here to make life better for others instead of making life better for ourselves at the expense of others. If you follow that rule, you can probably improve on your spirituality right away. The other thing that I write about a lot, with a lot of the characters in there, again, based on real people, is meditation. Meditation opens up a gift that we all have. And once you start to meditate properly, you start to get a better understanding. Meditation is listening to God, while praying is talking to God.
Interesting. A healthy balance for both, then?
Well, prayer is powerful. There's a science called noetics, and what it theorizes is that the thought itself is a form of energy. but it's a small amount of energy. But if you combine a number of people in one thought pattern, it could have an impact. And it happened in 1997 when they were meditating in Atlanta. Students were meditating on peace in Atlanta during gang violence. And when they meditated, the rate of violence went down precipitously. It also happened in the Middle East during the Beirut War in the 70s when the Arabs were meditating on peace, and all of a sudden there was a ceasefire from Israel. So it has to be numbers. So if you look up noetics and forgot the guy's name, he's a Facebook friend of mine, but look up noetics, and the director of noetics in the United States has a lot of papers, actual research on the subject matter. Something happened during 9/11 because everyone around the world had the same thought. And so what happened was that 54 machines that were supposed to have random generators did not perform randomly.
Wow. You're making my mind spin, Paul, as we chat. I love this. This is really interesting. So on top of this, but you have 3 other books as well, right?
2.
Can you tell us a little bit about those as well?
2 others.
2 other? Okay, yeah.
But they're what happened was I had 2 books self-published, starting in 2019 and then 2021. And let me tell you something, how we got to where we are. A Benedictine monk, a former Benedictine monk, searched in Google extraterrestrials and spirituality, came up with my book. He read it, he loved it, and he friended me. And then he said, "You know what's missing?" He said, "The shroud." And it turns out that he's a prominent researcher on the shroud. He's been researching the Shroud of Turin for 40 years. He's written 9 books on it. He was featured at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. He's the president of the Shroud. I forgot the association or something like that in the United States. And so he sent me a lot of documents from all over the world, researchers from all over the world about the authentication of the Shroud itself. And I started reading it, and I thought, wow, this would make a pretty good book. I didn't intend to write a 3rd book because the first 2 weren't doing well. So I wrote an outline, gave it to him. He loved it. And then I wrote the manuscript, gave it to him. And it turns out he's written the foreword for that book. And that book is going to be the 2nd book, which is a sequel to this one.
Okay.
Wow. Now, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that 3rd book, because that 3rd book was the one that captured the attention of the literary world. And when they found out that it was the 3rd in a series, they said they wanted all 3 of them. And that's how I got published.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So when I look at the disclosure paradox, I see all these pyramids on your website.
Yeah.
Is there a link? Is there a reason behind
my web
this?
designer came up with it. There is mention of ancient artifacts in one of the chapters. It's something that people can relate to, and that's why it's the first thing they see on the website.
Okay. Yeah, I had an author on yesterday from Egypt, born and raised in Egypt, lived close to the pyramids, saw them every day. They were common to him. And he said to me, I'm like, how can anybody make something like that? He said, some of those stones on the pyramid are bigger than your house. and they're up in the air. Like how he said, there's something happened here that was not human. That's all I can tell
Did he
you
tell you?
from somebody who's lived
Yeah,
there.
did he tell you about their orientation and the their their size in relation to the stars in Orion?
No, I'd like to hear more.
Oh, okay. So that's what's very interesting is that if you look at the Orion's belt and you look at the pyramids in
Right.
plan,
Yeah.
Orion's belt has 3 stars, and those pyramids are positioned and also sized accurately to the stars in the belt.
Wow. Wow. See, like I just see that kind of stuff and I'm like, how is this possible? Even with today's technology, how is that even possible? Right? To
Right.
make that. It's impossible. Right? So there's something bigger than what we're seeing. And this, even that alone, that's why I caught it my eye on your website. Even that alone is enough to make me go, like, who are we in this space? Like,
Right.
where are we? Where are we? You know, it gives me so many questions, Paul.
Well,
That's why I love what you're writing about, is you're bringing us into that story. And I love that.
what I also do is I guide the reader, if they intend to go into the rabbit hole, I guide them on how to stay out of it too deep, because people can get in way too deep on those things. And as I mentioned, it could cause depression because they don't know how far the conspiracies go, and you can see it in people right now. So I guide the reader that way, and I explain how the main character, who is me, was able to stay out of that rabbit hole and just stay curious, but in a constructive and in a more analytical manner than an emotional manner.
So there's some distance between you and what's happening, right? Where people don't just fall into this
Right.
trap of, right? Yeah, I can see that. All right. Um, so from your point of view, then, for an author that's listening, Paul, and they want to get out and start writing as well.
Sure.
I'm always trying to pull from my guests
Yeah.
any inspiration for a fellow author, to start as a blog, turn it into a series of books. Like, this is great. I love that your journey is taking you this way. Advice for a new author, Paul, has a story they want to tell and they're looking for the path. Is there anything you learned along this journey that could help an author?
I got a lot of comments. First of all, the motivation should be something beyond money and fame. There has to be, do you want to help people? Do you want to entertain? Is there something special that you want to express about yourself? Is there something that happened to you that people need to know that could help them? Things like that. The other thing is become more in tune with nature. Nature is a very inspiring thing if you spend time, and also not only nature but human nature. Look at how people behave in the park. See how they talk, because writing, when you're putting together words to describe a character, you use what you see, how people behave, to describe the character. You don't. There's no other way to engage the reader. So the other thing is, young writers have this complaint about writer's block, and the way to fight writer's block is very easy. Consider that the first words that you write are garbage. Just write whatever comes to your mind. Don't be critical of yourself. Don't be critical of what you're writing. Just let it all out, and keep something, that you could write on wherever you go, either in the car, in the bed, because you're going to wake up in the middle of the night and you're going to think about something and you're going to figure out the next day. So you better write it down. But writer's block could be very hard on people. And there are two books that I recommend that could help them. One is by Anne Lamott. She wrote Bird by Bird, and it's kind of like a staple for writers. And then, of course, my editor, who passed away in October, wrote a couple books about writing, and he was a great writer. He wrote one book that's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because it was like one of the best memoirs of rock history. He was a ghostwriter too, not just a regular writer. And so he got with Rod Stewart's lead guitarist, and they did a memoir called When We Were the Boys, and it turned out to be like the rock and roll memoir for everyone to read.
Nice. Is there any other authors that inspire you, Paul?
Yeah, I like Ursula Le Guin. She passed away. I also like authors that are nonfiction. Like Stephen Ambrose, David McCullough. Historic novels. I like, of course, Asimov. And there's a writer who was also nonfiction who has written a lot of books that are relevant to this day for the way that we our politics here in the States. Yeah. And his name is Tony Horwitz. He's very entertaining and very very knowledgeable, eloquent. So those are, I guess, my favorite. Tom Clancy, when I was younger, I read a lot, and I kind of patterned my detailed words like him because, we're both military. Obviously, he had a different line of work than I did, but I kind of follow his detail when I write some military stuff in there.
Excellent. Well, Paul, thank you, first of all, for adding us to your busy calendar out there with your grandchildren, doing all this great stuff. I'm glad that you have time with them, and thank you for making time for us. For the listener, the reader that's ready to come and support you in your journey and buy all of your books, we can send them to your website, right? So can you tell us again about your website?
Yeah, it's thedisclosureparadox.com. It's very simple. And
so everything's there, all your reviews.
Lots of reviews. I have, we went through 5 reviews in pre-publication from various people. One was former executive at Northrop. He loved it. The man I told you, Joe Marino, who was the former Benedictine monk, he wrote a review for me. So, and I got a friend who's a disc jockey in Chicago who wrote a review for me. He read the first version, by the way. So it's not like he didn't know what was going on.
It's great. And then we can also sign up with you and subscribe and get some information to us.
I try and update
as readers.
People, I post these interviews, right? There'll be book signings for local people. So yeah, I do that. And then my publisher already sent me a message today. She said, happy Pubs Day, since today was the first day of the publication. Right, yeah. And then she says, when do we start on the second one?
Well, that's a good problem to have. I like that, Paul. Well, keep us in mind, Paul, when next projects come up and they're ready to talk about. Always would love to have you back and get an update from you. I know the listeners love to hear back from authors they fall in love with through the show. So we'll keep that door propped open for you to come back as well in the future.
Great. Yeah. And you can, keep contact with Jay and, the folks at Black Chateau. They're real good.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much, Paul, for your time today. And we'll have links to everything that we've talked about in the show notes so people can click through and come and support you. And again, I've always asked my listeners and readers, to always leave a great review when they buy your book so that more people will find you and read their kind reviews about what they love about your book. Will get you more readers to come and find you and fall in love with your books, Paul. So again, thank you so much for taking time to be part of the podcast.
Thanks, David. Stay well over there in Canada.
Excellent. Thank you. We will. Everyone, as always, all the information in the show notes. Go and check it out and go support an amazing author. And you will see there's a lot of great things that are going to open your brain, open your mind, and get you to go out and take a look at those stars tonight and maybe see a little something different. Thank you, Paul, for being part of this.
Let's see it.
Hey, as we exit the podcast, as we leave out the door, I know the car's running. Somebody's eagerly waiting for you to get out there and go home. As we exit the podcast, I just want to ask if you have time. I would truly appreciate it. We ask for you to do this for our authors. When you buy your book, we ask you to leave a review. Why? Because it means a lot to the author and it tells other people that the book is great. Now, you don't hear me ask for this very often, so I'm going to do this here because we're friends, right? You and I are friends. I would love a review of this show because it'll tell more people to come and listen to this podcast. So if you have Apple, wherever you're listening, there's probably some way to give a star rating or leave a comment about the show. YouTube, you can always leave comments on YouTube. Every episode's there. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a review, leave a rating, and share this with somebody. That's probably the best way to grow the podcast is for you to share it. And by listening to the end of the episode, like you're doing right now, tells all the apps this is a good podcast. So thank you for already helping me by listening to this part. But go leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you for being part of the podcast family. Take care.